Welcome back to another Benji video on this 912 swap. This is probably going to be the last one. Today I'm going to tackle the rear suspension and improve it as much as possible to handle the additional power and the additional weight in the back of the car. So that's what we're doing today. Benji was here last Saturday. He arrived Saturday morning. I had just finished doing work on the car Friday. So there was tools all over the garage. We had to move things out to see the car. There's still tools in the passenger seat. He got a chance to drive it and really loved the car, loved the way it drove and accelerated and shifted and the brakes and all that. Actually, it was my first time meeting Benji in person. We had talked over the phone a few times, but because he's in the Philippines, I never had a chance to meet him. So this was really a great YouTube story about two car guys kind of coming together. It was cool to be able to drive the car again and experience his excitement because he's really excited about the car. She's sitting a little low in the rear, so we are at 23¼ on the rear. And the front, we're at 25 1/8. So normally the front is about 1/2 inch higher than the back. So we're about 1 3/8 lower in the back than the front. So we need to bring the back up probably like 3/4 inch or so. That'll give us that perfect stance and also make the suspension work better. So that's one task. The other task is to add a rear sway bar. The only long hoods that had a sway bar was the S model. And because this has more power than the S model and it's a performance car and it has a sway bar in the front already, we want to add a rear sway bar. Swap out those torsion bar bushings. I did have plans to swap out the torsion bars, but let me show you what happened. I've had these torsion bars in storage for a while and they are for a G50 car. And I didn't realize that. I should have known because they came from Shane. His car was an '87. So these are 25mm bars. That's what was used with the Carrera engine, the 3.2. For this car, it's probably a little too stiff, but the big problem is the ends are different. This won't fit the short wheelbase car at all. So we're looking for like the 24 or 23mm rear bars. I think this has 22, so we'll have to take it apart and see. But I actually reached out to try to buy some proper bars, and I did source some locally from one of those shops that is here in Huntington Beach, and the price was pretty steep, $250. So I don't know that we're gonna spring for that. That's a little bit steep. I like to buy these for like 120 or 150 or something like that. But at least we can get the bushings put in, the spring plates, and adjust the ride height and do some rudimentary alignment to it. Okay, for camber, we have about -2.75, which is pretty severe on this is the driver's side. Let's check the other side real quick. This is the passenger side and it's sitting at -4, way too much. Eyeballing it, it looks like it's got excessive toe in, at least on this side. And this side, the driver's side, is about the same. Looks like it's really aiming towards the inside of the front tire. So let's take it apart again. Here's a good look at the side of the engine there, lower valve cover. If anyone knows which way the shield goes, let me know. So one thought is it protects the oxygen sensor from heat from the engine. And the other thought is this protects it from like road debris and water. So I don't know which way it goes. Probably something like that maybe. This is supposed to be concentric with the cover, but when the rubber wears out, it moves the torsion bar all the way up into the cover. So it's actually metal to metal here. That's not maintained. That's not good. A lot of people ask me what these little circles are for. Well, you're about to find out. This is the rubber bushing that kind of isolates the road noise from the car. And it's just real thin here on the top, probably just from the car sitting. It just compresses it and all of it oozes down here to the bottom. So before I take the shock bolt off, I want to support this load onto the jack, and then we'll slowly release the pressure or the tension so we don't get like a loud bang and an explosion of this thing shifting down. Okay, now that's loose. So now when we lower the jack down, it's going to slowly relieve some pressure. And this is where it's no longer under tension. See how it just flops around? We need to record this angle because that's going to be important in setting the ride height. Minus 29.5. So now we can take apart these bolts without anything going bang. It's all just under zero pressure. If you want, you could scribe these lines if you want to preserve the alignment. I think because the new bushings are going to change the alignment so much as it is, there's no point in saving it. We know it's bad already. So now the arm is separate from the spring plate. So we got to watch out for the brake line here, but it's separate. So I'm going to put the jack back underneath here just to take some of the pressure off of it so it doesn't droop all the way down and damage the axle. Yeah, so this is already coming off. Right now the torsion bar is stuck on this side of the spring plate. Sometimes the torsion bar is stuck on the inside of the tub, but I can't get it all the way out because it'll only go that far. You can see what the hole is for now. So I need to separate the torsion bar from this part of the spring plate so we can take this off down here and then the torsion bar will slide all the way out. So I got to wrestle with that to get that off. This is marked left, by the way, so you don't want to swap them out. Even though they're symmetrical, you always want them to be loaded in the same direction, which is this way. Yeah, 23. So this car has already been upgraded with 23s, which is the ones that I was trying to buy today. So this is the one time that we really lucked out on this car. And then if you couldn't see me while I was working, I actually have this hose clamp attached onto the bar just so I could get a grip on it. There's really nothing to grip on here, especially when it's well greased. So I just put this over an old paper towel and really cinched it down. So I'll take that off now. I don't think I scratched the torsion bar at all. It can handle a little bit of scratching, but you just don't want to really chip the paint because that's what causes it to corrode. So let's see how we did. The originals were actually molded onto the metal. The replacements are slide-on. So let's see if we can get this off. Okay, for this one, I'm going to resort to heat. I got my, my respirator on, fire extinguisher ready. This is cooled down enough now where I can actually pick it up, and I've scraped it pretty clean. It's not 100% clean, but I don't necessarily want to overdo it either. There's just a tiny bit of friction on there. This is the rubber that's going to go on here, and you can see how the inside's chamfered. That's going to go up against the weld, but you really don't want the bushing to slide on here. It should fit really tight, and then it'll slide or shear on the outer side. And so that's ready to be reinstalled. I think this is marine grease or wheel bearing grease. So we'll just get a little bit down there inside that hole. Get some on the splines there too, so it doesn't make it difficult for the next guy to take this apart. You really don't want to get that kind of grease on the rubber. It can cause it to deteriorate. So we'll use rubber grease on the outside. Yeah, this surface needs to be pretty clean. There is some sliding action on the bushings here. So if this has got sand or junk in there, it's just gonna abrade the new bushing. So we wanna keep that as smooth as possible. Another little coating of grease on these splines. This is the rubber grease. It is silicone based, doesn't cause the rubber to swell or do anything weird. And I don't put a lot on here, just put a little bit. Yep, just like that. And so, see how the angle's way off? So you can use the splines to your advantage. Now the spline count is different on the inside versus the outside. So let's see if we can get it back to where it was before. And then we'll make adjustments based on that. Okay, so just eyeballing it, I was able to get it right back where it was before. That's 29.5, that's what I had before. And we want to make an adjustment to go down. We want this to go down. That's going to raise the car. So what happens if you turn one spline clockwise and the other spline here on the outside counterclockwise? That'll give you a 1/4 inch change in ride height. So we need to do that 3 times. So you have to kind of feel the splines. So I want to go 3 to the right. And that's where I was. That's 1. That's 2. And that's 3. So go ahead and push that all the way in. Yeah, 32. So that is got to be the one. I'm going to try that and we'll go from there. Okay, we're right at about 25, and once we roll it a little bit or go drive it, it should come down just a little bit more. So I'm gonna go do the other side and we'll take it for a spin. It's perfect, 24.75. Okay, the camber on this side is now negative 0.75. Like it to be maybe a little bit bigger than 1. So we'll try to do an adjustment next time we lift the car up and just get it pretty close. I also may check the toe in because it looks like it's towed in too far. Okay, the next order of business is the rear sway bar. Like I said, this car never came with a rear sway bar, and these are the Elephant Racing sway bar mounts. They have multiple hole locations, and they actually work for long wheelbase, and then you flip them for short wheelbase. This is the short wheelbase car, so these are extra strong, easy to weld in, so I'm gonna mount these in now. And then the sway bar that I have is a little bit too large, but let me show you what I got. This bar is the Weltmeister, and it's a universal bar. It's actually adjustable, so the way you adjust this one is it has a clamp here on the end, and if you move it out, it gets softer. If you move it in, it gets harder. And then these are like all Heim joint connected right to the spring plate. So this is nice and universal, and it will work with those sway bar mounts that get welded in. The difficulty on this one is it might be overkill for this car because this is a 22 millimeter bar, or actually it might be 23. I think it's, let me measure real quick. Yeah, I just confirmed 22.2. That's the diameter of the bar, and it's gonna be pretty stiff. The car does have a torsion bar in the front, and let me measure that one real quick because it's really small. I'm not sure if this is visible, but between the gas tank and the body is the through the body sway bar. This is in the front, and it measures 13.3. The reason why I say the rear sway bar might be too big is because the front's 13 and the back is 22. That's a really big difference. Now, even though the rear bar is adjustable, it's only adjustable by a few inches on the arm. It's way stiffer in the rear than the front. And I discussed this with Benji. I discussed it with actually my buddy Ian, and we both agreed that it's really overkill for this car. The Weltmeister is really like a racing bar, and Benji said, let's go ahead and put it in, and then he wants to keep it with the mounts and have it there in the car while it gets shipped to the Philippines, because you can't ship anything separate in the car. It has to be attached to the car. So we're going to include the hardware, all the connections, and then in the Philippines, he's going to have somebody either modify or remake this bar to be softer. So it's a better balance between front and rear. It's going to cause oversteer. So you already have a oversteer condition with, you know, the bigger power in the back. You got a narrow body car. Now you got the really big sway bar in the back. It can cause oversteer. Yeah, I often do this, just have this bar hanging here with some strings, and hopefully the lift isn't in my way, but these mounts go right about like that. That's where the mounts go. I just need to make sure that I don't mount it too high. And if I did that, then the bar would actually run into this cross member right here. So the instructions say to mount it just about like that. I know that this hole here is pretty much even with the center of that tube. That's based on my own car. So I just need to get the height correct and grind off all the undercoating here so I can actually weld to it. This is a very expensive wire harness, so we do not want to nick it. Plus, it's already installed, so I don't want to replace it. So I'm going first tin foil so the tape doesn't stick to it. And then this duct tape has a lot of resistance to sparks and stuff, so this will protect it. So what I'm doing is I'm holding this here, and then I'm just putting the bar up right next to it. This bushing, I think it goes this way. I have some new ones, but that holds the bar, and then I'm just trying to make sure there's room on both sides that clear the cross member there. It's just tack welded in, but that is how it works. So there's links that attach from there to the trailing arms, but I just have it held in place. Believe it or not, these hose clamps are what keep the bar from sliding left and right. They're here on both sides, so I got those loose. But that's how the Weltmeister is, and we'll connect up the links and finish welding it in. Looks like it's plenty of clearance here. It's pretty much even with this cross member, but it sits behind there. If we upgrade to a 915, I'm not sure. That's why I mounted it, you know, with plenty of clearance. I think these bolts are about the same height, so I think it'll clear the 915 too. Okay, I'm gonna pull this off one more time and epoxy primer this. Because this is the underside of the car, it really should be epoxy primer. And this is bare metal, so I do not want this to rust. And then also, because I hit this with the welder, I'm gonna spray cavity wax through these holes, and that's gonna treat the inside of the area that was disturbed by the weld. It's just good practice, and I don't want this to be a problem for anyone in the future. This car is going in a wet climate, so It needs to be preserved. And something like this, I do prefer to brush the epoxy primer on. It's going to get between the panels as much as possible. I'm going to let it gravity do the work, and I'm going to let it flow behind. Okay, that bare metal is going to get a second coat of epoxy primer. Epoxy primer is the right thing to put on bare metal, especially under the chassis like that, where it's going to have water kicked up, and the epoxy primer, when you brush it, can soak into the little crevices and so forth. It's already dark outside. I'm not going to be able to test drive it tonight. I got to wait 30 minutes for the second coat and then another couple hours before I can really reattach the sway bar. So I will provide a progress report on how it drives when I get a chance, probably next week. But this is likely the end of this project. Like I said, this was supposed to be like a quick engine swap, and we've done a little bit more than engine swap on this car, which is all good news. It's been a really fun project, and I want to thank you all for following along. For me, it was about getting more experience with the 3.2 engine, and I loved working on the diagnostics and learning more about the functions of the 3.2, dialing it in, getting the mixtures right. Putting it in the car has been great. We definitely came into some problems, but like anything else, I always share all the details with you guys and try to do it in a quicker fashion on this car. A lot different than I do my own cars. You know, my own cars are very long-term projects, and this was done in really less than 8 weeks. So I'm trying to show the different scopes of projects and how they can be accomplished if you really have a good goal in mind. And the goal on this was really to just get the 3.2 in it, make it drive. That's a pretty simple goal, and I think it does it really well. So thank you for watching this. Thank you, Benji, for trusting me with your car and your engine. It's really been a great experience, and I think you're really going to enjoy this car in the Philippines. I hope it serves you well, and I know it's going to go well because it's actually really fast. Everything that this project has taught me and some of the money that I've earned on this project, or all the money I should say I earned on this project, is going to go straight back into my 3.2 engine. And that's going to be just like this one. It's a stock engine. I'm going to run it as a stock engine, but I have already got plans to go individual throttle body and stroker crank, bigger cams, all the cool exhaust tricks, all the fun stuff going into my 3.2. And that's going to take some money, and that was part of the original plan. So I'm ready to do that. And my hope in sharing these videos, even this one, the short-term project videos, are to inspire you to get out in your garage, and whether it's a Porsche or not, or a big engine swap or not, tackle something just a little bit each week. That's what I've been doing, and I think I'm getting some good results with this car as well as my own cars. So that's why I'm here. If you have any questions, of course, please leave comments below. And if you need any specific help, you can always reach me on Patreon, or you can reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to help. Cheers.